One summer's evening, a woman left a bar in Anchorage, Alaska, and staggered into the street. She was drunk, she was defenseless, and soon, she was dead. The killer left this unusual clue at the crime scene. It was evidence that could be visualized with a simple tube of glue. August 8, 1996 was a beautiful summer morning in Anchorage, Alaska. But on this day, workers entering a downtown office building saw something different.
It's the first time I've ever experienced anything like this. I never want to experience it again. This is horrible.
It was a body laying near a wooded area.
She'd been beat in the face pretty severely, and she didn't appear to be breathing.
The woman's checked jacket and clothing were strewn over a 30-foot area, a clear indication of a life-and-death struggle.
It was an extended assault. It wasn't he just hit her in the face once. There were multiple blows to her head and her upper chest area.
She had been so badly beaten, a visual identification would be impossible. She didn't match missing persons reports, and apparently there had been no witnesses.
Anytime you have a witnessless crime, you have difficulties. You don't have anybody telling you where to go, where to look, who to ask, and what to do.
The victim hadn't been moved or touched since she was discovered, and the body had been protected from the sunlight. Because of where the victim was found and the circumstances surrounding her death, Captain Bill Gifford made an unusual decision.
I made the decision that we would go ahead and try to get latent prints off the body.
For the last 6 years, Gifford had been experimenting with a special technique to find hidden fingerprints on human skin. Super glue fuming is usually done with non-porous surfaces like glass or metal.
In the early 80s, a gluing factory in Japan, the employees had noticed that as they were gluing various items together, that the vapors which were materializing from the glue were turning the fingerprints, their actual prints on an item, a whitish color. Subsequently, they brought the information to the attention of the Japanese crime lab, and from that, with various organizational meetings, they passed the information on.
To do it with skin, the following conditions must be in place. No emergency personnel can have handled the body. They would wipe prints off and also leave their own. If the victim is dead for a long period of time, decay will destroy any prints. Any precipitation, even dew, can wash away prints. And the temperature must be right. If it's too hot, the prints will melt. If it's too cold, they'll disintegrate. Gifford ordered technicians to build a tent around the body using plastic tarp and PVC pipe. Inside, Gifford heated a pan of water to increase the humidity in the tent. Using a heat gun, a massive amount of super glue was blown into the airtight container around the body. Gifford's secret technique was to use more super glue than forensic scientists usually recommend.
In this case, probably 300 or 400 times the amount of what we'd normally use on skin. And this time we got the right amount.
The heated glue attaches itself to the biological oils left by someone's fingers or hands. The glue then hardens on the print and can be photographed. This isn't a technique that can be redone. Fortunately, in this case, it worked. On the victim's left thigh was a fragment of a palm print from the killer's left hand.
We were ecstatic. And this was the second latent print off of human skin that had been confirmed. So to finally get one, quite a milestone.
The palm print itself was of excellent condition. I could tell based on the slope of the terrain and the location of the print and injuries that were afflicted to the victim exactly which hand it was, because the individual had steadied themselves by placing their hand on the thigh area while they were conducting whatever injuries they were sustaining to the victim.
Above the body, on some low-hanging branches, police discovered 35 head hairs which did not come from the victim. It appeared the branches became entangled in the assailant's hair during the assault. Police now had the palm print and possibly a hair sample from the killer. All they needed now was to identify the victim and find the suspect. When the body of the victim was taken to the morgue in Anchorage, Alaska, the medical examiner determined that she was an Alaska native between 30 and 40 years old, 5 foot 2 inches tall, and weighing 100 pounds. He found a bite mark on the woman's breast and signs she had been sexually assaulted. There were some bloody boot impressions on the victim's torso, but they weren't clear enough to identify.
In this particular case, the violence didn't indicate whether they would be known to one another, but what it did tell us is that the suspect spent considerable time with the victim both before and after death.
The toxicology report indicated that the victim had a blood alcohol level of 0.308, over 4 times the legal limit. Anchorage police checked missing persons reports, but found no one resembling their victim. At the crime scene, above the body, in some low-hanging branches, police found human hair. The hairs, presumably the assailants, were analyzed and identified as mongoloid. Mongoloid hairs are from Asian races. Native Americans would be included in this category.
Mongoloid hairs tend to have very dark pigmentation. The hairs almost look black visually, and they tend to be very straight.
The hairs were very long, between 18 and 20 inches, and they were highly unusual.
This is one of the most distinctive hair samples that I've ever seen.
The long hairs had been bleached, and because mongoloid hairs are so dark in color, this type of chemical treatment has a distinct effect.
When they add bleach to it, it pulls some of the pigment out. And if it's incomplete, the hair almost looks orangish.
Police were now looking for a native Alaska male with long black hair down to his waist with an uneven orange tint.
We didn't know who the assailant was. We had no idea what that person was going to do, whether this was going to be a series of crimes. And for the first week or so, we certainly had concerns that we had a person or persons capable of committing such a heinous crime walking around our community without us able to identify who that person was.
Since the victim had a high alcohol content at the time of her death, police canvassed bars in downtown Anchorage, many of which are popular with the native community. Many of the bars have extensive video surveillance systems for liability purposes. This way, bar owners can prove they haven't served anyone who is visibly intoxicated.
Bar owners decide whether they want to have these videotape systems or not, and then they install them their own. So there's no mandate for it. They do this on a voluntary basis.
Police collected the surveillance tapes from every downtown bar that had a video system and looked through the hours of footage. One videotape was from an outside surveillance camera taken on the night of the murder. Fortunately, the picture was relatively clear for a night scene. Why? Even at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, The sun is still shining in Alaska since it's so far north. This is why Alaska is called the land of the midnight sun. On this one tape was a clear image of a woman wearing a checked jacket like the one found at the crime scene. She was walking down the street arm in arm with a man with long black hair.
I would say the video image of the individual was fair. It wasn't real clear, but it was fair enough that we felt comfortable to go out and begin searching for the person. It was enough that we could get an idea of who he might be.
The trick now was to find out the individual's identity. Anchorage police uncovered this video surveillance image thought to be their victim and the killer taken on the night of the murder. The videotape was from a surveillance system at a bar in downtown Anchorage called The Avenue. The bar had 9 tiny video surveillance cameras in operation at all times. Almost every square foot of the bar and the entrance and exit are all covered. The bar owner, John Pattee, says the surveillance is not a luxury, it's a necessity.
Video surveillance gives me another body. It gives you the opportunity to have maybe a couple fewer employees, and yet you can monitor, 7 or 8 different locations within the bar.
When police showed the surveillance picture to John Pattee, he could not identify the man in the image. But he knew the woman. Her name was Martha Hansen.
Everyone called her Marty. She was a regular customer since I've been here. I've known her, but just as a customer. A tiny little girl, never caused a problem.
A background check revealed Martha Hansen was a 48-year-old divorced mother of 6 children and was unemployed.
She was just very trusting, very open with people, and it didn't matter who you were, she'd reach out to you. I think that was probably what the downfall was here.
She'd been gone for 2 days before her children reported her missing, which is why police had not connected her to their victim. Pattee said that on the night of the murder, Martha Hansen was in his bar and was denied service.
The bartender's first engagement with her, that bartender determined that she was too intoxicated to be in here. So we asked her to leave, and she left.
Martha was inside for less than 5 minutes. Patrons remembered her, but did not remember seeing the man in the surveillance image. It appeared that the man never entered the bar, so there was no clear shot of his face.
The best images, unfortunately, were Martha Hansen and the suspect walking away from the bar, so we have the back of the subject as opposed to the front.
The image showed Martha and the man walking arm in arm, which suggested the two knew one another.
We're canvassing the area, again, going back to the businesses, going back to the retailers, going back to people saying, do you know who this person is?
When police put the photograph in the local newspaper, a concerned citizen called with some information. She said that a week after the murder of Martha Hansen, one of her friends blurted out that he'd killed someone. When she asked him how, he held up his hands, indicating that he'd either hit or strangled his victim, or both.
Her initial instinct was he's just bragging, he's intoxicated, he couldn't do something like this.
The man's name was Evans Lee Curtis, with hair so long it fell almost to his waist. Curtis was unemployed with no prior arrest.
Evans Curtis fit the photo that we received from the videotape to a T.
Curtis had left his pants in this woman's bedroom. They appeared to be similar to those in the surveillance image. When police analyzed those pants, they discovered they were spattered with blood. Evans Lee Curtis was interrogated by police, but he denied any involvement in Martha Hansen's murder.
So having your own rights in mind that we talked about, do you want to talk to us about this?
Police had the surveillance image, the hairs, and the palm print of the killer. The question now was whether the forensic evidence would match Evans Lee Curtis. Evans Lee Curtis said he had nothing to do with the murder of Martha Hanson. He claimed the man in the video image was someone else, that he certainly wasn't the only man in Anchorage with long hair. But his long hair was distinctive. It had the same unusual orange color as the hairs found at the crime scene.
The suspect's hair was also chemically treated, was very long in length. And the chemical treatment was irregular along the length, the same as what I found in the hairs from the scene.
Investigators wanted something more conclusive. They wanted to know if the partial palm print found on Martha Hanson's thigh belonged to Curtis. Police took impressions of his hands, focusing more on his palms than his fingertips. Investigators were looking for the distinctive crease between the index and middle fingers they found on Martha Hanson's thigh. When compared, there was no mistaking it. The print on the body was from Evans Lee Curtis.
That presents him with a serious problem, and that problem is, how does he explain why his palm print is on a dead woman?
The print evidence, while significant, was subject to defense attack. The super glue fuming process was so unusual, investigators were concerned whether it would be allowed as evidence. So they conducted DNA testing of the blood found on Curtis's pants. When the blood on the pants was compared to DNA from Martha Hanson's blood DNA, it was a match.
We have no idea why he left his pants behind, but we're glad he did.
But perhaps the most damning clue was found on the boots Curtis was wearing at the time of his arrest. They were given to forensic analyst Jim Wolfe. In a crevice on the boot sole, created by simple wear and tear, he found what looked to be a small pocket of blood.
What really caught my eye, what was on the victim's body appeared to be a heel impression, was some possible blood stains on the heel of the boot, actually inside a heel that was, or inside a hole that was worn into the heel.
Wolfe swabbed the area, extracting the blood. The DNA from the shoe was compared to Martha Hanson's DNA. It matched. Prosecutor David Wallace had one of the best cases of his career.
In this case, it was forensically solid. Mr. Curtis would have had a lot of explaining to do how all of these pieces of the puzzle were not him when I had multiple experts going to take the stand and say it was, in fact, Mr. Curtis that killed Martha Hanson.
Police discovered that Curtis knew Martha Hanson's daughter and had actually met Martha at a dinner party a few weeks before her murder.
She had trusted Evans. She had apparently been an acquaintance with him. He had been invited over to the house a couple of times, and I guess she had actually fed him.
Prosecutors believe that when Martha left the Avenue bar, she just happened to run into Curtis. Recognizing one another, they walked down the street arm in arm, possibly on their way to another night spot. But instead, Curtis took Martha to a secluded area and made a sexual advance. When she rejected him, Curtis attacked her.
No, don't do that.
In the ensuing fight, Curtis caught some of his hair in a tree branch, hair which had a distinct orange bleaching. Curtis got blood on his pants. The most unusual piece of forensic evidence was his partial palm print on Martha's left thigh. And when he stepped on Martha's torso, her blood became embedded in the sole of his boot. Since he left the body under the trees, protected from the sunlight and excessive moisture, the conditions were perfect to preserve the print for hours after she died, providing one final clue in a mosaic of evidence that ultimately identified Evans Lee Curtis.
Not aware of any other case in Alaska where a palm print, fingerprint, or any type of print has been lifted from a deceased person.
When faced with the overwhelming amount of forensic evidence, Evans Lee Curtis decided to plead guilty.
Is a brutal killing. The appearance of the victim's face is shocking.
Evans Lee Curtis was sentenced to 99 years in prison. His conviction, a combination of old-fashioned police work, high-tech forensic science, and a little bit of luck.
The videotape evidence, in conjunction with the palm prints and other evidence at the scene, were just over and above what we could have hoped for.
With what we have in technology, give something a shot. And if that doesn't work, modify it, give something else a shot. But there's untold things out there that will eventually be employed where we will be making identifications that people today would think impossible.
Forensic technology is extremely important in many, many cases, whether it's homicide to simple thefts. Because if you don't have a confession, if you don't have an eyewitness to the crime, you have nothing. So with forensic evidence, we are able to circumstantially piece together a puzzle that may never have been pieced together before.